Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to NUS Open House PPE Talk. So for now, I'm pleased to have one of our PPE faculty members, Dr. Joe Chow, who will be sharing more insights into the PPE program. So at the end of the session, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. You may either unmute yourself to speak, or if you prefer, you can post your questions in the chat box. We are also joined by two current PE students, Gerald and Justin. If you have any questions regarding student life or who like to hear a student's perspective, they will be happy to share their experiences. So without further ado, let me introduce Dr. Joe Chow.
Hi, thanks, Ryan. Hi everyone. Good morning. Hope all of you are um well and excited to learn a bit about NUS PPE. So I don't have any slides prepared because I think I'm just gonna walk through some of the basic things about the program, and hopefully, if you have questions, then you can raise them or ask us about them. But I thought it would be good to just take a bit of time to explain a bit about what PPE is, and also maybe it might be helpful for you if you have concerns or are trying to prepare your application and you want to craft your application. So I guess the first question that will arise is, what exactly is PPE, or philosophy, politics, and economics? From a logistical sense, in the University of NUS, it is a major that is housed within the Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences and the College of Humanities and Sciences. So that's the first thing, right? It is a major, which is a kind of degree program that you pursue as part of the what we call a cross-disciplinary program. So then the second thing, we guess the question will be, okay, so it's a major, you can do it, right? And then what exactly do you do in this major? Okay, that's the, I guess, the more substantive question. An answer to that is that this major tries to understand social science in a slightly different way from other social science disciplines. What I mean by that is that PPE is a program that tries to infuse or use philosophy to inform social science inquiry. So this is quite vague, but let me give you a very specific example. Let's take, for example, two very contemporary topics, I guess, on everyone's mind in recent times. Let's say, for example, the emergence of artificial intelligence or large language models, and say, for example, climate change. Okay. So, how would a PPE approach to these two questions be different from a typical social science approach? So, from a typical social science approach, I think um, economists will ask, okay, what will be the effect of artificial intelligence or large language models on the economy? What will be the effect on productivity? Questions like that, right? And then the political scientists will try to ask questions like, okay, what will be the effect of this on democratic citizenship? How will this affect politics? Things like that, right? And then a philosopher will probably ask questions like, what will be the ethics of using these kinds of tools, right? So what we try to do in a PPE framework is try to integrate these different concerns. So one big question that we will ask, for example, would be, okay, if people are concerned about work and they find value in work, and we know that these tools might displace work, then what kind of political framework might help us to address these kinds of concerns, right? So if it is true that these tools will have some effect on loss of jobs, then how should a society deal with this question? So in other words, it is trying to take a more integrated approach where we bring together the normative concerns with the empirical science from politics and economics. And by the way, if you want to learn a bit more about this subject, The talk at open house, when I'm giving a talk at open house next week, is about this topic, about how job displacement from these kinds of tools, how should we deal with it? How should we address it? So that's the kind of idea that I hopefully gives you a sense of what we're trying to do, where we are bringing together disciplines to understand something um, that is happening in the world, right? I think that's also clearer in the case of climate change, right? So climate change definitely has some strong economic impact, right? There's been a recent paper out in one of the top economic journals. I was just reading it before this meeting that suggests that increases in the global temperature or climate change can have a significant impact on economic growth, right? It will slow GDP down, right? So suppose that that's true, right? Then there's a question that emerges is what should we do, right? So there's this kind of economic question, and there is this kind of philosophical question about what are the individual duties we have as individuals to address this, right? What should we as individuals do? Do we have obligations to try to reduce our footprint? Do we have obligations to change our behavior, right? And of course, lastly, there will be this very big and maybe very difficult political question to answer. Is global cooperation on this issue possible, right? What are the kinds of frameworks or institutional uh, standards by which we can actually ensure that this will be something that will be able to change our behavior? So the idea would be that we are trying to take something that's happening in the world, and rather than understanding it just from an economic or political science or philosophy point of view, we want to bring together all of these concerns, right? And the interesting thing is that for almost everything that is happening in the world out there, the integration will probably be helpful to help you understand the thing that's happening, right? So if you leave out, for example, economic point of view in understanding climate change, you are quite likely to be unable to explain why people are behaving as business as usual models, right? Why is it that the status quo is that there's not much change on this issue? Um, it can be very hard to explain that if you just think from the philosophical point of view, right? Or even from the political point of view, you might say, okay, there will be a consensus, but why is there not much behavior changing, right? So that's why we try to bring together these tools. So hopefully that gives you a sense of what we do in this major, and also hopefully gives you a sense of, as you maybe if you want to apply and prepare your essay, that will be the kind of question that will be kind of raised, right? We'll ask you to examine an issue from all these three angles, and you try to do your best to try to provide us an answer that will try to bring together insights from all the three disciplines. So I've been talking about 10 minutes already, so I don't want to kind of talk much longer and bore you, but I want to kind of like end off with some of the more logistical things in terms of the structure of the degree major. So how it works in our case is that students are required to take all three courses from all three disciplines, right? So that differs a bit from the structure that you might get in Cambridge or Oxford, where you are able to drop your philosophy, politics or economics, and you can just focus on one later on your degree. Like I mentioned, because we are trying to be an interdisciplinary program in the more substantive sense, we are don't have that option for students, right? So how it works is that typically for the first year, you will do the introductory modules or the courses to all three disciplines: philosophy, politics, political science, and economics. And then you do the introduction to PPE, which I usually teach. And then later you'll do courses from all three departments, right? For philosophy, political science, and economics. So the advantage that you get if you are part of the PPE course is that you get access to three of these departments, right? Which are quite relatively strong in different areas, especially the economics department and the philosophy department is quite strong in terms of certain kinds of areas. And so you get access to all these three departments teaching you the courses, and at certain points of your major, you will also get what are called capstone courses, right? So you will have courses that will bring together all the three disciplines to understand a specific issue, right? So, for example, I teach a course on that's called welfare and distribution, which tries to understand some of those questions that I just discussed about, like let's say what happens when there's automation or what happens when there's climate change. And I teach another class on knowledge and society, which is more about how social forces impact the production of knowledge. And maybe, I'm not sure yet, but I'm planning in the next few years to have a course that's called PPE and climate change, because I think that that's an important thing to kind of think about as well. So that's the kind of structure of the major that you have, right? And what kinds of courses you'll be taking. So hopefully that gives you a sense of what the major looks like, because I think what one of the biggest questions that we get is exactly what is PPE. That hopefully that gives you a sense. And if you have other questions, please do let me know. I'll kind of pass the time a bit to both Jaren and Justin, who maybe might be able to speak a bit more about student life and what things look like in the university. Um, and we'll see if you have any questions or what else I might be able to share in a bit.
Thanks, Prof. Maybe Jared, you want to go first?
Right.
Self-intro.
So I think thanks, Prof. Joe, for introducing the curriculum. I think that pretty much sums up, what we do on a daily basis, right? And to add on to Prof. Joe, you have definitely the autonomy to do additional modules if you want to, I wouldn't use the word specialized, but to delve a bit deeper into like a specific discipline if you want to. The PP curriculum in NUS is certainly very interdisciplinary. Um, well, in terms of student life, there's a lot of options to explore. You definitely have the NUS-wide CCAs. If you choose to stay on campus, definitely your residential program would have some interest groups. You can also look forward to the NUS PPE Club, which organizes a lot of events, including fireside chats with ministries and networking events. So these are some things that you can look forward to in terms of student life. Yeah. On time to Justin. Yeah.
Hello. Thanks, Jared. I'm Justin. Unlike what my Zoom name says. Agree with Jared in the sense that like PPE is not really okay. You can think of your NUS life potentially as comprising various things together. So a really big part of that is student life. A really big part of that is your major. But do know that you also have the leeway to declare other second majors or minors should you wish to do so in NUS. So for example, a lot of people in our PPE cohort take a second major in economics. So this allows them to like go deeper in depth into like economics if they want to do so. Usually this is due to like uh, more like employability concerns because economics is supposedly the most employable out of the three disciplines that comprise PPE. Or if you're interested in like things like we have a lot of minors and majors in sociology because sociology is by and far also another interesting topic. More so if you're like in PPE, you gravitate towards a sort of like humanities side of things. Yeah, and student life wise, you also have like many CCAs to pick from, IGs to pick from. So there are many people in like sports, I think the karate, taekwondo in our cohort. We also have people in like choir, it's called resonance in NUS. And for me, personally, I stay in NUSC, so that's one of the residential colleges in NUS. Jared also stays in NUSC with me. So we participate a lot in IGs on that side of things as well, and not just at a PPE level, if that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, if you have questions, you can just ask lah. Who should I pass the time to at this point?
Yeah, maybe thanks, Jaren, and thanks, Justin, for that. It's very helpful. And just notice that it's all J's today. Um, so maybe if you have questions, please feel free to type in the chat or unmute and ask your question. Um, yes, If you have anything that is unclear or you want to clarify with us, please do go ahead. Anyone have a question?
Okay. I mean, if there's like no questions right now, maybe we can talk a bit more about what you can expect for your like first year in the program. Okay. So wait, maybe how about we talk about the strengths of the PP cohort also first. So I think one a thing that many people ask when they enter PPE is like, how does it distinguish me from, let's say, your average like person who declares maybe political science and like economics as like their major, right? Or like if you want just do econs and a second major lah, right? That's usually one of the things that people will say if you tell them that you're interested in PPE. Well, I mean, there is some merit in the fact that indeed NUS is actually like a free and like you can basically take modules from different departments. So independently, if you didn't declare a PP major, you could theoretically take all of the modules that comprise a PP degree. But what you do have, in fact, is like the cohort and a sort of you have the cohort and you have the faculty that guides you in terms of like the PP program. And this is, I think, one of the strongest value adds if you come to PPE. I can testify that like our cohort is very, very much very bonded. We are very small. We are relatively like small cohort of about 30 people in our batch, and in the junior batch is like how much, bro? Like 40-ish, something like that to that number. So you can expect like a smaller cohort, but in the sense that we all know each other, we all know what we're up to, and so like we are very much involved and aware of each other's strengths and weaknesses, and we can like usually come together to like do things together. So that's a common motive that you'll see in these sorts of like XDBs, where there's more sort of connection, there's more sort of like collaboration in these like cross-disciplinary programs, lah. Right. What else can I talk about?
Yeah, just to add on to what Justin has said, I mean, I think that one thing that I think is a bit hard to understand when you are not part of the university is that the courses are important, but they are just a small part of the overall university experience. Um, I know that seems very odd for a faculty member to say, but I think that's true because the courses that you take are, of course, important, but almost equally and sometimes more important is the people that you are taking those courses with, that you know, that the networks that you have and things like that, right? And what I think is good about the PPE program is that generally from the batches that I've seen, and I because it's a new program, I think I have literally been here from the second batch, and I taught most of the first batch. So you see that makes a big difference in terms of how they can help each other, how they can learn from one another, and also in terms of the alumni network, which is growing over time. Yeah. Any thoughts about that, Jared?
Um, Not at the
Oh,
moment.
hold on. I think Ryan asked a question that which yes, I wanted to get to about the how relevant is it in today's world. So let me kind of like briefly talk about this because I think that is a question that most people will have on their mind, and then please feel free to pitch in the Jaren and Justin. But I'll just talk about what we have noticed, the trends from our oh yeah, all the graduating batches. So the program is now about 6 years old. So we have seen 3 graduating batches. Um, the students typically have strengths in generally 3 areas, I would say, right? The first is that they might not be the most technically uh inclined or compete like compared to other majors, but they definitely have a good technical baseline, which can be very useful for a variety of jobs. In fact, as Justin mentioned just now, if you wanted to do a second major in economics, then I think you would be actually one of the strongest in terms of like quantitative skills, right? And so because of that, one area where some of our students do tend to go to are more kind of like data-driven roles, right? Both in the private and the public sector. So generally, I think that's what we have seen, right? So for the public sector, um, there are our students are across a whole range of ministries, Ministry of Education for policy officers, um, Ministry of Finance for Ministry of LTA, MSF, MFA, all these areas, right? So basically, areas where you need some technical proficiency, our students tend to be quite strong, and also when it's important to communicate ideas clearly and also deal with all foreign service and politics. Also, we are also quite strong. And then one area which is increasingly of interest, I think, because it seems to be a job that many people gravitate to naturally. It's also in kind of the private sector in terms of some students go to tech and also some students go to things like financial services, like investment banking, research analysts. Yeah, so those are the kinds of roles that many of our alumni tend to come to. In terms of the general statistics, the major has done pretty well. I think that um, almost everyone, about close to 90%. I mean, I'm not sure exactly the numbers, but this, I think, true. Around almost every student has either found a full-time job or if they wanted to, they are in graduate study. So quite a number, I think about one third of our students will go to do graduate studies, and typically they will land in places like, I think students have gone to Stanford, some in Oxford, some in Cambridge, some in China in Peking University. There's a strong PPE and climate change masters. So those are the kinds of places that our students tend to go to. So hopefully that helps to answer your question. Yeah, any thoughts about anything else, Justin and Jared?
I think one thing that I some friends ask me what's so special about the PPE degree. I think if you notice, among the FAST degrees like say econ and pol science, um, the PPE degree is a Bachelor of Arts. So it's not a Bachelor of Social Sciences. So there is a certain difference that this degree with philosophy, politics, and econs has, right? And definitely if you want that technical skill, um you can consider, taking advanced level courses in economics and political science. That being said, yes, if since PPE is a very broad area, students would have different quantitative backgrounds and competencies, but like what Prof. Joe said, it doesn't put you at the back foot. I think like the requirements of the technical rigor that comes from, your PPE 4Ks, your higher level PPE modules, is acceptable for most, I would say. Yeah. So no worry about that.
Yeah, I had a question from someone who sent me a direct message. So I'll just answer that because I think I'm the only person who can answer. And the person asked, what do you look out for potential students during interviews? So typically, how the it works, I mean, and I think Jaren and Justin, you can talk about this later, about your own experience. How it works is that there is a first kind of general application into NUS, and then there will be some kind of further filtering process. We don't know exactly how that works. And then when it comes to, okay, now these people are eligible, and then what we will typically do is get you to film a video that introduces yourself and all so that's I guess the video or the interview component, right? So what we are looking for there is for you to show that you are genuinely interested or curious, right? That you have some kind of like a personal kind of like why are you curious and interested in joining this program? We want to get to kind of understand what your personal motivations are, right? And we're not really looking for some kind of so if you say like I want to join because it's interdisciplinary things like that, right? Like that doesn't help you to stand out so much, right? We want to hear more about like why you are interested in exploring this area and how you think, what kinds of questions you might want to have that will help us to learn more about you, right? Yeah, so maybe Justin and Jaren, if you could share your own personal experiences, like when you were applying, how do you find it? Maybe that would be helpful for them as well.
I guess I'll go first. I mean, when I applied, I think it really helps to, as Prof said, to explore like whatever case they give you through all three disciplines, and it's important that you give them their due credence. Because it's very easy to say like for example, in terms of politics, it's very easy to say like, oh, uh, the satisfaction or like the approval or the legitimacy of a government. So that's how much a government has approval in like TLDR, ERI5 is based on economic statistics. It's very easy for someone like say like a politics student to like throw this in their essay and say it's a valid point, right? It does make sense intuitively. But I think a PP student will want to say like, what do you mean by this exactly? What sort of indicators or economic indicators are the most prescient or the most salient for like the populace? What would the populace or like the average student respond to in terms of like an economic indicator that will make them approve of a government, for example? Is it like GDP in general, or is it something more equitable, or is it something like something more floaty or like something more abstract out there that you haven't considered yet? So things like that, and exploring each of these disciplines in actually more tractable or more tangible detail is very important uh in terms of like trying to show to the professors and like the admissions panel how you're thinking about each of the three different disciplines like tangibly and tractably. Yeah. Jared, do you have anything to add?
I think maybe I can come from an angle whereby I have also applied to universities in the UK, where you have a lot of PP programs. I think one way you can, okay, but you don't have to. One way you can think about the interview and the essay is that they are quite similar to, the personal statement in the UK, whereby you are here to demonstrate why you are interested, how have you got into these three areas, and what you really want to find out, from your degree. So, for example, if let's say you're interested in something, say capitalism, right? Very broad idea, right? And what do you mean by being interdisciplinary? You can demonstrate that, through your interview and your application essay. Why it's similar to the personal statement in the UK is because you have the opportunity and to kind of demonstrate your interest in and your own initiative in doing your own research. I think therefore, if you really are at a stage whereby you're thinking about how should I go about approaching this essay, or you're at a stage whereby you don't even know whether PP is the thing for you, you can explore those readings out there about some area of interest you might be interested in, think about it in terms of the three different lenses and see whether that might be a right fit for you. So I think just conveniently I have a book with me right now. So it's like the title is economic ideas you should forget. So if this kind of things, are some things that you're interested in, maybe you can just take a look, consider, contemplate over it, and then see whether that's something you might be interested in. Yeah.
Wait, okay, one more thing. Uh, you ideally in the PP, what we are juggling with in the average day to day for like a PPE module is like you're juggling with many different frameworks, many different competing frameworks to understand things in real life. I mean, if you're already here in the call, you will probably understand that like real life is very much complicated and it's not reducible to like formulas the way like hard science is, like chemistry or like chemistry is. So what happens in that case is that people or social scientists and philosophers come up with competing frameworks to help understand things. And the thing is that these frameworks all make sense in their own different ways. But when taken together, they don't really make sense together. So how are you supposed to juggle all of these together? I think this is one thing that people want to see when you're applying for the program, how you're able to like maybe sort of like nuance your take and sort of balance between the different competing frameworks on like things like economics and like politics together. Yeah.
Yeah, I think what Justin said is and what Jared said is very helpful. Hopefully, for you to kind of think a bit, make it less big, but also at the same time, it will still be complicated, right? Like kind of trying to think about like, yeah, there will be competing frameworks and ways of thinking about something. Um, and like Jaren said, you can go and take a look at certain kinds of economics books. They don't have to be actually what I think most helpful sometimes to try to understand PPE is not always to look at the most technical kind of economics books because sometimes that uh, might be too confusing and also they will make assumptions that will be challenged within the PPE kind of framework, right? So if you take books like like Jaren mentioned, the economic ideas you should forget, or you walk into a kind of popular bookstore or a Kinokuniya or something like that, and you look at the economics shelf, right? And sometimes there will be titles like um, economic ideas that you should yeah, why nations fail, things like that, right? Books like that, right? And they are easier to read, but they present a kind of a different view about these ideas that you want to capture. So that might be a good place to start if you are looking for some kind of inspiration or better understanding what we do here. Yeah.
Maybe also to add like don't worry about like who specifically you're reading. I think many like commentators out there have very valid like frameworks that you can help like maybe comment on in like your essay. For example, I think the major is blessed to have like the PPE like discipline in general has many is sort of interfacing with like the mainstream consciousness. So you have authors like Yuval Noah Harris, like *Sapiens*, if you've heard of it. You have things like Darren Acemoglu, like the *Why Nations Fail* author. These are all more or less very popular books. Steven Pinker as well. I mean, his reputation has gone down recently, but he was quite famous back then. And these are all books that you will see in your average popular. And you don't have to think that, oh, to make it to this degree, I have to read this sort of very esoteric, sort of like crazy out there books that I have to dig up on like JSTOR or something. No, you don't. You simply can just go to like your local bookstore, like even find online like these sorts of like commentaries on society in general, politics in general, economics in general, and you can use them as like material to kind of work on while you're applying to this major if you're so interested. Yeah. Yeah, that's all I have.
Yes, and so as Ryan says, we'll probably be ending soon. So if you have any burning questions, please do let us know.
Right. Okay. I don't think there are any more questions. Maybe before we end the session, probably if you could give us like a piece of advice to incoming PPE students, just one piece, what would it be?
Prof, you go first.
Uh, I guess for me it would be um, don't be afraid to just ask questions. Justin, Jared?
I think definitely be curious with issues and be prepared to challenge your assumptions and relearn and unlearn things. So for example, for me, I'm not very adept at philosophy. When you encounter things about, from philosophical angles or like political economy, it challenges the way you might have approached an issue before. So in university, in the spirit of university life, be prepared to learn and unlearn things along the way and explore what you might not have previously known.
Yeah. Okay, my one's gonna be more non-academic, but my advice is just to try out new things. I think you're only a year one, you're only an undergraduate once, right? Some people spend like 20 years of their life trying to chase back what they lost during an undergraduate by doing postgraduates, unfortunately. But try to take stock of it when you can by trying new things. Uh, yeah, like doing extracurriculars, trying to balance between your academic and social life. These are all things that, in general, every degree will go through. But I think what makes PPE strong in S2 is that you'll have a bunch of people to struggle with together and take courses with together. I mean, every one of your seniors, if you do come in, will have stories about how like there's like a massive gathering of like 40 students at the lectures in like EC 101. So that's the introductory econs module, getting scolded by like the professor or the lecturer who's doing the lecture. Yeah. So these are all memories that you'll get at PPE, but at the same time, do go out to explore, do see what you're strong in, do see what you're weak in, see what kind of person you want to be while you're still young, in a relative sense. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Thank you for your advice. Uh, right. So we have come to the end of the session. Thank you, Dr. Joe, Jared, and Justin for the insights and the experiences to the PP program. Um, so if you have any further questions about the PPE program, please feel free to refer to the NUS PPE website, which I put in the chat. Or you can just reach me out via email. My email address is also in the chat. Yep, I think that's it for this session.
Sorry, Ryan.
Oh,
Just to
yes.
add,
Sorry.
so as part of the PPE club, we do have an email as well. So if you'd like to ask more, say student-oriented questions, say student life or particular student experiences, you can definitely send an email to another address, which I will be putting in the Zoom chat right now. Yeah. But of course, as what Ryan has mentioned, if you're looking into more curriculum information or admissions information, this is not the link to go to. You should go towards what Ryan suggested, which is the website.
Yes, correct.
Okay. Thank you everyone for spending time with us on this Sunday. Hopefully you learned something about the PPE program and you can contact those two emails if you have further questions. Otherwise, thank you and have a good day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, do you want to talk about the